Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Can you see the Bhagavad-gita screen? And you can hear my voice, obviously. All right, let's finish chapter 18. Today's a glorious day. So, chapter 18, Prabhupada entitles Conclusion, The Perfection of Renunciation. And we left off at chapter 40. Just to refresh our memories, this first half of this chapter, different topics were seen in light of the three modes of material nature. Since chapter 14, much of the discussion has been the modes of nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Recently, I read an excerpt from a lecture Prabhupada gave, and he said in India that the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad-gita, Krishna is mostly speaking about karma yoga. In the middle 6 chapters, he is primarily discussing bhakti yoga, and in the final 6 chapters, the subject matter is jnana yoga. So let's pick up on text number 40. Na tad asti prativyang va divi deveshu va puna sattvam prakriti jaya muktam yad ebi syat tribir gunai. There is no being existing either here or among the demigods in the higher planetary system, which is freed from these 3 modes born of material nature. And the logic behind that is that if someone is beyond the range of the 3 modes of material nature, then that person is a resident of the spiritual world. But if one takes birth here in this material world, high or low, and has a material body, then suffice it to say, such a person is under the influence of the modes of nature. But we also learned at the end of chapter 14 how to transcend those modes. And Krishna's famous verse, Mang cheo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samati yaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate, that if one is engaged in devotional service, bhakti yoga, without any interruption, in other words, 24/7, 365, day after day, moment after moment, if one is engaged in one or more of the 9 items of devotional service, then one is considered to have transcended the modes of nature. But to the degree that I'm not engaged in bhakti, then there is still some influence of the modes of material nature. Text 41. So now the discussion will be the 4 varnas: Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Visham, Sudranam cha parantapa, Karmani prabhavaktani, Swabhava prabhavayar gunai. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras are distinguished by the qualities born of their own natures in accordance with these material modes, O chastiser of the enemy. So remember, we have mentioned several times that the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and false ego accompany the soul throughout each of its different material bodies. So the material bodies change one after another, but the subtle body of mind, intelligence, and ego, that stays with the conditioned soul birth after birth. So we have been accumulating over millions of lifetimes a certain kind of nature or mentality. And our next birth is determined on how that subtle body has been choosing and making its decisions: mind, intelligence, and false ego. Shamo damastapakshocham kshantir arjavam evacha jnanam vijnanam astikyam brahma karma swabhavajam. Peacefulness. So peacefulness here means mind control. Peacefulness is the quality of a mind in the mode of goodness. And then self-control, Dhamma, that means controlling the senses. So there are 11 senses, 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, 5 working senses. That if you can control those 10 senses, then you have Dhamma, self-control. And peacefulness is achieved when your mind is under control. So we have this very famous bhajan, which is my favorite bhajan. Bhaja hure mana Srinanda Nandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare. There it was stated that if the mind is fixed at the lotus feet of Krishna, then one can easily conquer over the mind and achieve freedom from fear. If you are peaceful, that means you are free from fear. And that song, Bhaja Hure Mana, is stating that if the mind is fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna, then one can be peaceful and free from fear. Austerity, tapa. Saucham, purity. So there are 2 kinds of purity, external and internal. External purity, one takes bath once, twice, or in the case of a sannyasi, 3 times a day. So that's external cleanliness. And then there's internal cleanliness, whereby one is always thinking of Krishna's name, fame, form, pastimes, entourage, instructions, etc. So there's 2 kinds of purity, internal and external. The next word, kshanti, tolerance. Sometimes another word is used for this word shanti, forgiveness. If you are able to forgive the minor offenses of others, then that is also shanti. That is not the same word as shanti or peace. This is a different word, kshanti, tolerance or forgiveness. Arjavam, honesty, or sometimes you'll see the translation simplicity or straightforward, not being duplicitous. And then jnanam, knowledge. So of course there's 2 divisions of knowledge, material knowledge and spiritual knowledge. And this verse is talking about the Brahmana. So he has a storehouse of spiritual knowledge. He may also have some material knowledge, but his most acute knowledge is that of the scriptures, spiritual knowledge. And then the next word, vijnanam, wisdom. Wisdom is different than knowledge. Knowledge is like information, but vijnanam means realized knowledge. You may know something theoretically. You may have some book knowledge, that's good. But more important is that the knowledge that you have received by putting the knowledge into practical use. So that is called realization. And so therefore, wisdom is the same as realization or realized knowledge. You put the book knowledge to test, and now you can have tangible experience. And then this next word is the most important of all the 9 qualities listed here. Astikyam, religiousness. Elsewhere, Prabhupada explains religiousness. He says religiousness means full faith in the Vedas and in God. That's real religiousness. full faith. Now, the other day, I was trying to remember a verse, but Krishna did not allow me to remember. But today, he is allowing me to remember. Yasya deve para bhaktir, yata deve tata gurau, tasyaite katihita hiyarta, prakashante mahatmanaha. So this verse is from the Upanishads. And this verse says that if you have implicit faith that Krishna is God, and you have equal amount of faith in your spiritual master, then whatever you read in the Vedic literatures, you will comprehend, you will understand. So this astikyam, religiousness, means full faith in Guru and Sadhu. Now notice the line here, Brahma Karma Swabhavajam. Yes, this is how the Brahmanas work. That is the whole caste system. The caste system is not on how you were born, that you were born in such a such family. No. Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra is determined by how you work, how you act. Brahma karma. Here, Prabhupada translates as duty. So if you act like a Brahmana, then you are classified as a Brahmana. And now we're going to read about the Kshatriya, the Vaishya, and Sudra. So it's a matter of training and practical application. The caste system has very little to do with one's birth. The caste system which Krishna mentioned in chapter 4, Chaturvanyam Ma'asristam, Guna Karma Swabhavajam. Here the same word is used, Swabhavajam. You were born with a certain nature, and that nature will determine how you act. Now, let's take an example of this. Prahlad Maharaj. He was born in a demon family, and even Indra, when Prahlad was in the womb of his mother, Indra and the demigods assumed that because Prahlad in the womb of his mother Kayadu was the son of Hiranyakashipu, Indra and the demigods assumed that the boy was by nature a demon, and that was understandable. But Narada pointed out to Indra and the Devatas, when they were trying to take Kayadu away, and they were going to kill the child as soon as she gave birth, Narada said, no, this boy in the woman's womb is not a demon. He's actually a great devotee. And even if you tried to kill him, he would be protected by Krishna. So Indra and the demigods respected Narada's instruction. They didn't carry off Kayadu. But the idea was that even though Prahlad was born in a demon family, his swabhava, his nature, was not a demon. He was actually born a devotee. He had a devotee swabhava, his nature. So these 9 items, peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. If that is your nature, if that is how you work, then you're a Brahmana. It doesn't matter how you were born or where you were born. That doesn't matter. Even Narada Muni instructed Yudhishthira, Yasya yal lakshanam proktam. One is classified by the symptoms of how one works. Now we go to the Kshatriyas. Shauryam tejo dhritir daksham, yuddhe chapya palayanam, danam ishvara bhavascha, shatram karma swabhavajam. Heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, and leadership are the natural qualities of work for the Kshatriyas. Another example of this idea that it's not how you were born, but what is your swabhav or nature, is in the case of Parashuram. Parashuram was born the son of a great Brahmana, Jamadagni, but Parashuram's nature was that of a Kshatriya. He did not have the Brahminical swabhava or nature. No, he had the nature of a Kshatriya. Now we go to the next two. Krishigo Rakshya Vanijyam, Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam, Parichayatmakam Karma, Sudrasyapi Swabhavajam. Farming, cow protection, and business are the natural work for the Vaishyas. So Krishna, he decided, although Krishna was originally the son of Vasudeva, a Kshatriya, Krishna was transported to the home of Nanda and Yashoda, and they were Vaishyas. They were doing cow protection. So Krishna accepted the life of a Vaishya when he moved to Vrindavan. And then when Krishna married only 16,108 wives and was living in Dwaraka, Krishna behaved as a Kshatriya. And for the Shudras, there is labor and service to others. Swe swe karmanya bharita, sang siddhim labate nara, swakarma niratak siddhim, yata vindati tat shrinu. By following his qualities of work, every man can become perfect. Now please hear from me how this can be done. So for me, these next two verses are very, very significant. One should not be despondent. Oh, I was born a Sudra. In my case, I was born less than Shudra. The technical classification of my birth is Malecha Yavana, below Shudra, outside Vedic culture, very low birth. And even Prabhupada one time in Modi Nagar was preaching to the lady who was, Prabhupada was the guest of Mr. Modi. They owned this city, Modi Nagar, which is in between Delhi and Vrindavan. So Prabhupada was the invited guest of the owner of the town. And when Prabhupada was speaking to Mrs. Modi, Prabhupada kept quoting a verse from Bhagavad-gita, and he would look over to me. And Prabhupada was repeatedly saying in Hindi, Papayonaya. Prabhupada was referring to me as Papayonaya, someone born in a sinful family. But Prabhupada was using that verse in Bhagavad-gita to explain that even though I was born in a low, sinful family, even I was now elevated to the position of devotee, which is actually superior to a Brahmana. That's what Prabhupada was telling the lady in Hindu. And repeatedly in the conversation, he would use this word Papayonaya, and he would look at me because it was just me and her and another devotee in the room. But I understood exactly what Prabhupada was saying, that this Krishna consciousness philosophy is so great that even though one is born Papayonaya or in a sinful family, even still one can achieve perfection. So this verse, Krishna here is giving us encouragement that it doesn't matter how you were born. Anyone can achieve perfection. Let's see what Krishna says. Yatat pravittir bhutanam yena sarvam idang tatam swakarmanatam abhyaksha siddhim vindati manava. So there it is. Siddhim vindati manava. How a man achieves perfection. Look at what he says. By worship of the Lord. That is how you achieve perfection. as a Brahmana, as a Kshatriya, as a Vaishya, Sudra, or Malecha Yavana. It doesn't matter. If you worship the Lord, and who is the Lord? The source of all beings, and who is all pervading. So, one of Krishna's name, Vasudeva, all pervading, or Vishnu, also means all pervading. The source of all beings, that several times that has been ascribed to Krishna by himself and Arjuna, that Krishna is the origin of all living beings, and also how Krishna is all pervading in the Paramatma feature. And by Krishna's energy, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work. So, you may have to work as a Brahman, Kshatriya, and Vaishya on the material plane. But at the same time, if you worship the Lord, you can achieve perfection. And in the age of Kali, the worship of the Supreme Lord is simply done by chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srayan Swadharma Viguna, Paradharmat Svanushtitat, Swabhava Niyatang Karma, Kurva Noti Kilbisham. It is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature. See, once again, duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. So we all have a nature. Bhagavad-gita does not deny your nature. You use your nature to serve Krishna. Sahajang karma kaunteya, sa dosham api natyajet, savarambha hi doshena, tumain agnir ivavrita. Every endeavor is covered by some fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore, one should not give up the work born of his nature, O son of Kunti. Even if such work is full of fault. So, there is no material work which is without fault. When you're working on the material plane, there is going to be some sin, some fault. And he gives a nice example. If there's fire, there has to be some smoke. So, of course, Krishna is emphasizing this to Arjuna, because in the beginning, Arjuna was arguing that fighting the battle of Kurukshetra would be sinful. So all along, Krishna has been refuting, and Krishna has repeatedly said, get up and fight, get up and fight, get up and fight. And even if Arjuna here in 18th chapter is still thinking that there's some fault, Krishna is pointing it out. No matter what you do in the material world, there's some fault. Asakta buddhi sarvatra, jitatma vigata spriha, naishkarmya siddham paramang, sanyasen adi gachyati. One who is self-controlled and unattached, and who disregards all material enjoyments, can obtain, by practice of renunciation, the highest perfect stage of freedom from reaction. Siddhim prapto yata brahma, tatapnoti nibodame, samasenaiva kaunteya, nishta jnanasya ya para. O son of Kunti, learn from me how one who has achieved this perfection can attain to the supreme perfectional stage, Brahman, the stage of highest knowledge, by acting in the way I shall now summarize. Buddhya vishuddhaya yukto, dritya manam niyamya cha, shabdadin vishayang tyakva, raga dvesha vyudasya cha, vivikta sevi lagvashi, yata vakaya manasa, dhyana yoga paro nityam, vairagyam balam darpam. Ahankaram balang darpam, kamang krot, I made a mistake, let's go back. Vivikta sevi lagvashi, yatavakaya manasa, dhyana yoga paro nityam, vairagyam samupashrita, ahankaram balang darpam, kamam krodam parigraham, vimuchya nirmamo shanto, brahma bhuyaya kalpate. There's this line. Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. We saw that back in chapter 14. I quoted that verse earlier. I quoted that line, Mangchayo vyabhicharena, bhakti yogena sevate, sagunan samati yaitan, brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So that line means achieving once again your spiritual status of Sat Chit Ananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. That's what it means to be Brahma Bhuyaya. Being purified by his intelligence and controlling the mind with determination, giving up the objects of sense gratification, being freed from attachment and hatred. One who lives in a secluded place, who eats little, who controls his mind, body, mind, and power of speech, who is always in trance and who is detached, free from false ego, false strength, false pride, lust, anger, and acceptance of material things, free from false proprietorship, and peaceful. Such a person is certainly elevated to the position of self-realization. So this same idea was explained in chapter 2, and it was explained in chapter 14. This position of self-realization. For myself personally, I like that Bhagavad-gita verse chapter 14. For the third time, I'm quoting, Mangchayo vyabhicharena, bhakti yogena yasevate. If you engage in devotional service non-stop, then Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. You are on the spiritual platform. Now here comes a very famous verse of this Gita, one of the top 25. Brahma bhuta prasanatma na shochati na kangshati samak sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. One who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes the supreme Brahman. So that means God. We are also Brahman, but we are not the supreme Brahman. The spirit soul, Jivatma, is Brahman, spiritual. But Krishna is the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything, meaning on the material platform. That's what it means, to never lament or desire on the material platform. He is equally disposed toward every living entity. Why? Because he knows, or she knows, Krishna is in the heart of everyone. In that state, one attains pure devotional service unto me. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tatvata tato mang tatvato gyatva vishate tad anantaram. One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. This is the third time that this statement has been made by Krishna. He said it in chapter 8. He said it to the second to the last verse in chapter 11. And now towards the end of chapter 18, for the third time. It is said in the Vedas that if something is repeated 3 times, that is there for emphasis. So this cannot be overstressed. If you want to see Krishna, you must engage in devotional service. You want to return or go back to Krishna, you must engage in devotional service. If you want to know or understand Krishna, it's only by devotional service. Hare Nama eva kevalam. Nastyeva, nastyeva, nasti. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. Only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me by devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. So that line, Vishate tad anantaram. You want to go to the kingdom of God? You want to be fully liberated, eternally liberated? Only by devotional service. Shravanam kirtanam Vishnu smaranam padasevanam archanam vandanam dasyam sakyam atman nivedanam. You must engage in 1, 2, 3, or 9 kinds of devotional service, which you're doing right now. Shravanam, hearing. That's why this class is so important. Sarva karmanya pisada kurvano madvyapasraya mat prasadad avapnoti shasvatang padam avyayam. Though engaged in all kinds of activities, my pure devotee, under my protection, reaches the eternal and imperishable abode by my grace. Yes, I was mentioning this last Sunday, that the impersonalist, the yogi, tries to achieve liberation, but merely on the strength of one's own penances and austerities. But the devotee achieves liberation by the grace of Krishna, not simply by one's own endeavor. Endeavor must be there, yes, but the devotee is dependent on Krishna, and by Krishna's grace, one achieves his imperishable abode, as it says here, by my grace, under Krishna's protection. Chaitasa sarva karmani Mayi sanyasya matpara buddhi yogam upasritya machchitta satatang bhava. In all activities, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. This again has been mentioned previously, especially in chapter 8, verse 7, where Krishna spoke the famous words, Arjuna, you go and fight this war, and at the same time go on remembering me. So here Krishna is saying, yes, you have to perform so many activities. That cannot be denied. But at the same time, you have to depend upon Krishna and work under his protection, meaning in Krishna consciousness. Machchitta sarva durgani mat prasadat tarishyasi atat chet twang ahankaran nasrosyasi vanangshyasi. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. Again, same point. The devotee achieves success by the grace of Krishna. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So that was Arjuna in chapter 1. Arjuna in chapter 1 was in false ego, thinking it was all about him. But the devotee, being conscious of Krishna, dependent upon Krishna, surrendered to Krishna, he leaves everything up to Krishna. Yes, the devotee does all his prescribed duties, but leaves the result to Krishna. He depends on Krishna. Yad ahankaram asritya nayotsya iti manyase mityaishya vyavasayaste prakritistvam niyoksyati. If you do not act according to my direction and do not fight, then you will be falsely directed. By your nature, you will have to be engaged in warfare. So this verse is so significant. Krishna is still telling him he wants him to fight. He has been speaking this Bhagavad-gita simply to get Arjuna to pick up his bow and fight the war. So he says, if you still don't fight, by your nature, you will be engaged in warfare. So Arjuna can't escape it because it's his nature. Take, for instance, myself. It is my nature to speak and sing. So if I do not sing and speak for Krishna, my nature is I will sing and speak Maya. It's my nature. I can't avoid it. I will do it no matter what. So the whole concept of Krishna consciousness, you have a nature, do it for Krishna. Swabhabajena kaunteya nibaddha svena karmana kartum nechasi yan mohat karishyasya vasho pitat. Under illusion, you are now declining to act according to my direction because Krishna wants him to fight, but compelled by the work born of your own nature. See, he's repeating. He's hammering this point now several times already. Your nature, Arjuna. You will act all the same, O son of Kunti. Here comes another famous, one of the top 25 verses of Gita. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshe arjun tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart. We've seen that at least 4 or 5 times in this Gita. This is one of the top 3. Krishna is in everyone's heart and is directing the wanderings of all living entities because Supersoul is the controller, who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. So the line in the Gita, Yantra Rudani Mayaya, on a machine made of material nature, that's the body. Previously in chapter 2, the body was compared to clothes that you wear. Later on in chapter 13, the body was compared to a field that a farmer grows foodstuffs. Here, the material body is referred to as a machine. You all get in your automobiles. You are different from your automobile. You drive the automobile, you come out of the automobile, you are not your car. I don't address you, Mr. Mercedes, Mr. Toyota. You would be offended because you're not your car. You're the driver or passenger of the car. 2 distinct items. So we are not the body. That was taught first lesson of Bhagavad-gita. You're not the car you are driving. I'm driving an American car. You are driving Indian car or Panamanian car. We are not the car. We are seated on a machine made by material nature or material energy. And the master manipulator is Krishna, the Supersoul. Tam eva sharanam gachcha sarva bhavena bharata tat prasadat parang shantim stanam prapsyasi shasvatam. O Scion of Bharata, surrender unto him utterly. So who's that him? Obviously he's referring to the previous verse, Supersoul. So Krishna wants Arjuna to surrender to Krishna in his heart, utterly, meaning completely. By his grace, Supersoul's grace, you will attain transcendental peace and the supreme eternal abode. So right now at this stage, we are dealing with mostly Supersoul. And That is why we accept a spiritual master, because at this stage, we cannot contact directly the supersoul. The spiritual master is the external manifestation of supersoul in the heart. Therefore, at this stage of our spiritual development, the relationship with the spiritual master is of topmost importance, because that is the only way you're going to be able to know something of your relationship with Supersoul. So, in Krishna consciousness, everything is centered around the relationship of service to the spiritual master. Every morning in ISKCON they sing, Yasya prasadad Bhagavat prasada, Yasya prasada nagati kutopi, Dayam stubams tasya yashastri sandyam, Vande Gurosri Charanardavindam. Now we are more concerned with pleasing the spiritual master. If the spiritual master is pleased, automatically Krishna is pleased. Why? Because the spiritual master is the external manifestation of Krishna in the heart. Iti te jnanam akyatam guyad guyatarang maya vermishyaitad asheshena yashesyasi tata kuru. All this line, I've spoken on this line hundreds of times. Yate shasi tata kuru. Let's look at the meanings. Yata, as, ichhasi, you like, tata, that, kuru, perform. Thus I have explained to you knowledge still more confidential. Deliberate on this fully, and then do what you wish to do. So this verse is also a turning point in the Bhagavad-gita. Krishna has now explained Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. Now he's coming to the final conclusion. He's winding up his instructions. So what is Krishna saying to Arjuna? I've told you everything. Now you have free will. Krishna is not forcing Arjuna. Krishna is not twisting his arm. Krishna does not have a gun to Arjuna's head. Do what I tell you or else. No. That's not how Krishna works. Krishna respects us as individuals. And Krishna allows us minute independence, minute free will. All Krishna can do is give you the options. That is what this whole Bhagavad-gita has been. He has given the options of the mode of goodness. He has given you the options of the mode of passion. He has outlined the options in the mode of ignorance. He's explained everything. He's given you so many options. He leaves it up to us to decide what we think is best for us. This I very much appreciate about the teachings of Krishna. Krishna deals with this with respect and with due intelligence. Krishna respects our individuality. As I said, he's not forcing anyone. This verse is so important. Yatech yasi tata kuru. As you like, you do. Sarvam guyatamang bhuya srinu me paramang vacha ishtosi me dridam iti tavo vakshami te hitam. Because you are my very dear friend, I am speaking to you my supreme instruction, the most confidential knowledge of all. Hear this from me, for it is for your benefit. So yet again, Krishna is about to give his supreme instruction. Throughout Bhagavad-gita, he has said, oh, this is knowledge better than what was given before. This was now again he's saying, my supreme instruction, the most confidential. So these next two verses, you can say is the conclusion of Bhagavad-gita. Look what he says. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. This verse is exactly the same verse that closed out chapter 9. The last two lines are different, but basically the meaning is the same. And the first two lines are exactly the same. Chapter 9 ended with this verse. Now, as Bhagavad-gita is winding up again. So this is the supreme instruction. Always think of me. Become my devotee. Worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise this to you because you are my very dear friend. Now comes the big verse, the most famous verse of Bhagavad-gita. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja ahang tvang sarva papebhyo mokshayashyami ma shucha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. So this is important. Sarva dharman parityaja. Abandon all other concepts of what you think is religion. In this Kali Yuga, everybody has their own conception of what is religion. Here Krishna is saying, I'm not interested in what you think is right or wrong or what is religion. Here he is saying, just surrender to me. As I point out, when I ever am invited to speak to Christian audiences, I point out to them what Jesus once said. Jesus was asked by a Roman centurion, Lord, what is the greatest commandment of God? And what did Jesus say? Love God. He didn't say love me. Krishna says surrender to me because he's God. Jesus did not say love me. Jesus said you should love God. How? With all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's what Jesus said is the greatest commandment. So it's the same thing Krishna is saying here. Jesus says, love God. Krishna says, because he is God, surrender to me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. So even if you think your so-called morality or religion you are abandoning for the sake of Krishna, and you think you will suffer, Krishna says, don't worry. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. And look in the purport, what Prabhupada says here at the end. The particular words used here, ma shucha, don't fear, don't hesitate, don't worry. These are the three meanings of ma shucha. As Prabhupada finishes, one may be perplexed as to how one can give up all kinds of religious forms and simply surrender unto Krishna. But such worry is useless. Idang te na tapaskaya, na bhaktaya kadachana, na cha shushrusave vacham, na chamang yobhyasuyati. This confidential knowledge may never be explained to those who are not austere or devoted or engaged in devotional service, nor to one who is envious of me. Ya idang paramanguyam mad bhakteshu abhidasyati bhaktim mayi param kritva mam evaishyat yasankshaya. For one who explains this supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed. So now you know why I am so anxious and so enthusiastic to do these classes. Here you see the reason. And at the end, he will come back to me. So this is how I want to give up my body. If I'm going to have to give up my body, I want to give up my body by explaining Krishna. That's how I want to die. Not in a bed. I want to die by giving a class. Hare Krishna. But not for another 50 years with your blessings. Nata tasman manushyeshu kashchin me priya kritama bhavita nacha me tasmad anyak priyataro bhuvi. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. So this is another impetus for me to preach. Because if I continue preaching, Krishna considers me his most dear servant. And I definitely want that. So my desire is to go on preaching for another 50 years. Adyeshyate chaya imang dharmang sangvadam avayo jnana yagyena tenaham ishtasyam iti me mati. And I declare that he who studies this sacred conversation of ours worships me by his intelligence. So all these weeks that we have been doing this class, little did we know that we were actually worshiping Krishna by means of our intelligence. Very, very encouraging. Shraddhavan anasuyascha srinuyad apiyo nara sopi mukta subalokan prapnuyat punya karmanam. And anyone who listens with faith and without envy becomes free from sinful reactions and attains to the auspicious planets where the pious dwell. So this has been your reward for attending this class week after week. You have become freed from sinful reactions. Kachid etach trutang parta tvaya kagrena chetasa kachid agyana sammoha pranashtaste dhananjaya. O son of Pritha, O conqueror of wealth, have you heard this with an attentive mind? And are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled? So like a proper spiritual master, the spiritual master wants to make sure that the disciple has understood what he has been hearing. Prabhupada mentions, here, let's look at the purport. The Lord was acting as spiritual master of Arjuna. Therefore, it was his, Krishna's duty, to inquire from Arjuna whether he understood the whole Bhagavad-gita in its proper perspective. If not, the Lord was ready to re-explain any point or the whole Bhagavad-gita if so required. So this is how a spiritual master thinks. The spiritual master is like a loving father towards the disciple. Just as a father is always concerned about maintaining and the welfare of the child, so the spiritual master has the same attitude towards this disciple. So now Krishna is done talking. Krishna began his talking in chapter 2, and now he is done. Arjuna uvacha nashto mohasmritir labda tvat prasadan mayachyuta stitosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. There is the line. Karishye vachanam tava. I shall execute your order. Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, O infallible one, the word was used, one of Krishna's names, Achyuta, O infallible one. My illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy, and now I am firm and free from doubt, and am prepared to act according to your instructions. So this is how Arjuna has accepted Bhagavad-gita. Number one, his illusion is gone. He has regained his memory and he's giving credit to Krishna by your mercy. He is firm, he's determined, no more doubts. Now what he says, prepare to act according to your instructions. That means Arjuna is ready to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. So that's Arjuna's last statement. Bhagavad-gita ends with Sanjaya. This Bhagavad-gita began with Dhritarashtra asking Sanjaya a question. My sons and the sons of Pandu are there at the holy place of Kurukshetra. What are they doing? What's happening? And so by Sanjaya, by the mercy of Vyas, has been telling Dhritarashtra this whole Bhagavad-gita like a television reporter, an on-the-scene reporter. Sanjaya uvacha, ityahang vasudevasya, partasya cha mahatmana, sangbadam imang asrausyam, adbhutam roma harshanam. Sanjaya said, thus have I heard the conversation of two great souls, Krishna and Arjuna. And so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end. Why? Because Sanjaya is a devotee. Only a devotee will be able to actually appreciate the Bhagavad-gita, as he says here, so wonderful. Yes, a demon will not say Bhagavad-gita is wonderful, but a devotee will say, oh, Bhagavad-gita is wonderful, my hair is standing on end. That means ecstasy. Sanjaya has been relating everything, and he's in ecstasy because he's a devotee. Vyasa prasadat shrutavan etad guyam ahang param yogam yogeshwarat krishnat sakshat katayata svayam. By the mercy of Vyasa. So see, Sanjaya gives credit to his guru. In the same way, if I have been successful in this Bhagavad-gita presentation, it is only because Prabhupada has empowered me. By the mercy of Vyas, I have heard these most confidential talks. So Bhagavad-gita is confidential, directly from the master of all mysticism. So that's Krishna, who was speaking personally to Arjuna. Rajang samsmritya sangvadam imang adbhutam kesavarjunayo punyam hrishyami cha muhur muhur. O king, as I repeatedly recall this wondrous and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I take pleasure being thrilled at every moment. So, this is spiritual subject matter. It is not hackneyed. It is not dry. There is no satiation. A spiritual subject matter is always appearing newer and newer. I have read Bhagavad-gita many, many, many times. This is not the first time I have done a complete seminar on Bhagavad-gita. I've done it several times over the years, and I enjoyed it more this time than before, because that is the nature of spiritual things. It's ever fresh. Tachchat sangsmritya rupam atyadbhutam hare vismayo me mahan rajan vishyami cha punak puna. O king, as I remember the wonderful form of Lord Krishna, that means the Virat Rupa, the Vishvarupa, the universal form, I am struck with wonder more and more, and I rejoice again and again. As Prabhupada says in the purport, it appears that Sanjaya, also by the grace of Vyas, could see the universal form Krishna exhibited to Arjuna. Well, we know that because it was said, Sanjaya uvacha, what he was seeing, what was there, he was telling Dhritarashtra. Here comes the final verse of Bhagavad-gita. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, Yatra Parto Dhanurdhara, Tatra Shrir Vijaya Bhutir, Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion. So that's Dhritarashtra's opinion. So we have finished Bhagavad-gita. Give yourselves a hand, everybody. You did it. I didn't think we would reach this far. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.